Alrighty.
Tonight, we're going to do a live, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, youtube.com/@Fk8TD. Tonight's topic's going to be maybe controversial or not. There's going to be some depth.
Hey, Loki. So your birthday just passed. You are 4 years old now. Whoa, hello. Okay. You want to say hello to everybody? What's up, Bubby? Oh, gee, that's my mouth, dude. Just waiting for people to come in. I know I'm a little bit early tonight. Hopefully we get a nice big audience tonight. Make sure to get everybody to join. Let everybody know I'm live. Usually I'm a couple minutes late. Surprised we're not getting more people in here, especially being that I'm going to be talking about cam timing tuning tonight. Usually get a lot of people for that. Come on, baby. Just waiting a minute for everybody to roll on in. Send a few messages out. Oh, come on, baby. I think I'm going to do an interview with one of my customers because he's got a great story. Really do. I think it'd be really good. Maybe I should repost that whole live thing.
Debate on this.
I'm surprised we don't have a few more. Maybe a couple people are busy. I think I'm going to have to definitely start doing this on a regular basis again because we used to get like 60, 70 people in my live. Then I kind of started slacking. You know what? I should put some notes on the board. Differences. Let me see. Some of the differences. Glass cleaner. Some of the differences. So we got gear ratio, weight, rim, and tire size, tuning limits. Yeah, let me see. That pretty much covers a lot of the differences. Let me see. Let me see. What else do we have that's going to affect these things? Arrow, because we're talking about 60 to 130. That's going to be a minor contributing factor. And that should cover most of that. So I just want a reminder for myself to remember what we are doing as far as limits. I think a lot of people don't really know the limits for this. And then let me see what else we want to do as far as cam timing. We're going to talk about some other cam. We're talking about back pressure. Let me see. Let's see back pressure. And then we're talking about how it affects boost pressure, cylinder fill. Notes are just for me. EGTs, spool, fuel consumption. Head gasket failure. Let me see. Just some of the things we'll go over in cam timing. Come on, we have at least a couple more people signing in here. Unless this notification's not going out. I hope that the notifications are going out. There we go. Just people are starting to head in. I'm going to have to do a repost on it again. Just do that real quick, get some more people in here. Ladies and gentlemen, I am live right now on YouTube, so come join me on the topic of Fk8 versus DE5 versus FL5 and cam timing tuning, and what the differences are, not in the cam timing between the cars, but as far as 60 to 130 and quarter mile between those vehicles and cam timing tuning in general. Check it out now, youtube.com/@Fk8TV right now. So what I'll do is I'll just basically do a quick repost, get some more people in, because we definitely got to get a few more people in here. There's definitely not enough in here right now. Definitely need to do a quick little post and then get that up, and then we can get this room, putting this party going. So who's all here? Let me see. Does it give me the names? Not sure how it actually shows the individuals in the room. Just please bear with me for another minute or a couple minutes here. Hello, gentlemen. It might be a slow night. Oh, there we go. We got a couple more in here. All right, cool. Please forgive me. My sinuses are jammed up. This is Benzodrix. I live in the South, so. And Loki, you want to say hello to everybody? Come here, Bubby. Say hello. Say Loki's birthday was the other day. Say I'm 4 years old. It seems like I just got him yesterday. Yeah, always a sweetie. All right. Get at least one more person going in here. One more, and then we'll start the show. We'll start talking about what some of the differences are, and maybe how we can kind of clarify some of that. So, come on, just one more. We get it rolling. One more person. Here, you want some ice? You always love some ice. There you go. Lost one. Then again, we lost one. No, maybe we just got somebody refreshing. So, I guess I should start at this point. Do you have used the full race DI pump yet? I actually am the one who did the Motec testing and development on the full race pump. That's how I know that it can rev out to 8,600 with no problem. And actually, I've taken it out to 8,900 RPM and full ethanol, upper 700s all day long with a big enough injector. So I also came up with the adjustments in Motec for the DI pumps. I'm pretty sure that Nostrum gives to people so that they can run it cleanly inside of Motec. I do have a couple other specialty tweaks for those who are really trying to go all out with it, but yeah, so I actually kind of developed the settings for it. I think it's a really good pump. I'm sure those that don't have a lot of injector, the pump's really big when you start getting some RPM in there, and I mean big. So, so yeah, I did do the development on that as far as like the file and the testing, and knowing that we had to really stretch the limits of the RPM because there was a spring change in the design. So, yeah. So, anyways, on to topic. Fk8 versus DE5 versus FL5. Well, the first and foremost thing that is the biggest difference between them, and it's going to have the biggest bearing on your 60 to 130 and your actual quarter mile, is the gear ratio. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, the gear ratio is huge. And just for relevance, just going from being very optimized on my car on the 60 to 130 to going to PPG gears, when I switched from just FK gears to PPG gears, that lost me a lot of time. And it lost me a lot of time because I was no longer in my power band at that point. And it was very unfortunate that I lost a lot of time there. So, and the best way to do this is to show you as far as how much time I lost on that. So if I go to, it's really easy calculator to use, right? So you use a gear ratio mile per hour calculator, and it's by Spicer Parts. I use it a lot of the time when I'm trying to optimize a setup. So your FK8 is a 4.11 final on a 25.8-inch tall tire, and at 8,000 RPM red line, and a 1.125 fourth gear, that ends you at 132.85 miles an hour. So that is very optimal for an 8,000 RPM car. But the FL5, it's 3.8. Got to remember the FL5 final. Final drive. Let me see. Gear ratio. I forget. It's 3.842 if I remember correctly. Yes, 3.842. So with the FL5 final, and the DE5, that where it shines is in lower RPM, because now at just 7,400 RPM, we can hit 131 miles an hour in fourth gear. And depending on your tire size, if you even go up to the next taller tire. So which one's better? Well, it really depends on your turbo setup. Now, for really big 600 wheel horsepower cars, they might actually, in comparison to an FK8 on a 60 to 130, that the ones that rev to 8,000, 8,200, might struggle in an FL5. It just won't be as advantageous, right? Graph gears are really close to an OEM ratio. So you're going to be looking more like an FK8 ratio, but the graph gears aren't really going to change too much, because the biggest difference is going to be final drive, right? Your final drive is your biggest difference between, like the DE5, FL5 use the longer final drive, and they always the same exact gear ratios. So everything's just kind of pushed up. So, but where the FL5 and DE5 will shine more is in quarter mile at like 560 horsepower. Yeah, they'll beat a Type R. Why? Because they don't have to shift into fifth gear. So literally the differences that you're seeing in the quarter mile for the FL5 and the DE5 being faster than a Type R, like under the like really high horsepower stuff, when you're dealing with 600 and below, like below 600, yeah, it's going to be faster, because you go to 7,600, you're past the actual traps at 135 miles an hour in fourth gear. So yeah, it's going to be faster. So Obviously, the disadvantage is you're eventually gonna break gears too, right? Like no matter what, eventually it's gonna happen. But it also so happens that I have. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I have an FL5 trans here. I had planned to do this because I wanted a better street ratio for my car. And now, after I do the next bit of testing, there are some differences. One, this sensor right here is different, and this needs to be wired different. You cannot just swap the sensor. This sensor is longer, and the housing sticks out further. And the other thing that I noticed is right here, this part of the case is beefier, and there is a larger bearing in here. So I have not mounted it. This thing's got like 1,500 miles. There's not even any clutch dust in there. So I just haven't gotten around to it. So as far as like 60 to 130, the Fk8 ratios on a higher horsepower car are better with a sticky tire. Like you get a good sticky tire and you're going to have better ratios. I don't know why my camera's kind of that dark, so I do apologize. So the Fk8's definitely, when you start, but in smaller turbo sense, like if you're stock motor, an FL5 should do better in a 60 to 130 because you could just do third gear, fourth gear, and do like a stock motor G30 770 might end up right in that sweet spot, right? Whereas on an FL5, FL5, sorry, yeah, but on like a cammed ported head car, right, doing like 620, 630, the Fk8's going to fare better just because the RPM. Get out of there. Come here, you. Get out of there. You troublemaker. His name is Loki for a reason. You need to stay out of that stuff. So there is where your big changes are. Now, I know that some people have seen where the Integra clutch got roasted, right? I do have 60 to 130s. I only have the one that's from a while ago on the stock ratios. Come here, you. Hey, come here. No, I don't want to put you in the house. I want you to hang out. The video time from 60 to 130, that's around 6.6 seconds ish. I never got my Draggy to really function over here. Really crappy satellite reception. So it could do a little better, but that was about 27 pounds, about 600 wheel horsepower on a G3900. I had my Mickey ET Street SS's on, but to be honest with you, on the car, there was no better traction between those and the R888 if I aired down the R888. So I really, that's another thing, tires, but that's another topic for another day. But it's very comparable and easy to do stock bottom end mid sixes on a stock bottom end Type R. If you just port the head cams and you can go to 8,000 RPM stock bottom, it'll take it. Just keep the torque safe, right? You could definitely do it. Maybe even get a little bit taller tire to get you past that 130 mark in the top of fourth gear. You will need like a 3770 or something like that, right? So now, wait. Now there's the disadvantage. So although it's not huge, right? The FL5 and the DE5 are both at a weight disadvantage. It's not a huge difference, but if you look at it this way, every 100 pounds in a car in a quarter mile equates to about 1/10 of a second. So that there is a simple scenario. Now, rim and tire, I don't know, although I do believe it's possible because I believe the offset is the same to still fit a 17-inch wheel on an FL5 and a DE5. I don't believe their brake packages are any bigger on either of those vehicles. I've seen the DE5s, the FL5s when I was at the Charlotte meet and for the jailbreak tour. I met up with Javier and Kevin from Honda over there and met a lot of nice people out there. Fives would be wild, man. Fives would be pretty wild. That's really hard to do if somebody wants to hit fives. That's like you need slicks, and you better have some. You need like 700 wheel plus to do that, and you better stick. And I mean, you might only be able to do that at the track, to be honest with you. And you're going to need suspension work. Oh, that's another thing I should mention. Out of the box suspension, the FL5 and DE5 are better. The wheelbase, if I'm pretty sure, is a hair longer. Now, the longer wheelbase keeps more weight, keeps less shift to the rear. So the FL5, DE5, again, are going to favor the actual longer wheelbase. Any longer wheelbase car for front wheel drive is going to keep the nose down more. Now, of course, you can do this in suspension, right? That's definitely something you can do. So I just didn't know about the DE5. If the DE5 brakes were any different, like the offset is really kind of the issue, right? The wheel offset is the issue. May not be just the brakes. So like you can't fit any 17-inch rim on an Fk8, right? It has to be the same offset that you get for it's the rear Camaro SS or Cadillac CTS-V, big brake, rear 17-inch wheel. That from a Weld, right? Or VMS, or choose, I forget some of the other brands, but I think you guys get the point, right? So that is going to play that factor, right? Now, as far as tuning limits, now we already know that there's no current Motec yet for FL5 and DE5. I do know, or at least I've been told, that if you take a Motec and just plop it in a FL5, the engine runs, but don't know about, I was told everything else doesn't work on the car yet, right? So there's no firmware, as it's called, to communicate. So our tuning limits are definitely going to be ECU limit. And while there is a lot of things in Honda currently, right, there is one thing that may hold people back for, and that is the mass airflow is, there's no bigger housings, and that's definitely a limit, right? So a 3-inch housing is going to definitely start limiting 550s, right? You're definitely going to start having some limits there. Although I can already confirm, and I've already done it in testing, that you do not need to run a mass airflow sensor on an FL5 either. I've already got one out there with perfect testing, perfect fueling, and everything else, with no need to run the mass airflow sensor. So that pretty much solves that inlet. Now, I can't tell you about the DE5 yet, right? I don't have any real R&D on a DE5 yet. But being everything's pretty close, shouldn't be an issue. And aerodynamics. The FL5 has softer aero package, the drag coefficient, those things, it's minimal stuff, right? But it's there, right? It's there. Last thing, though, I should go back to the wheel and tire. The DE5 and the FL5 are true wide body cars. They are. So that means there's more room to fit a bigger tire. And when I was there at the meet, I believe the standard tire size is a 255. Don't quote me on this. Again, I don't have all the standard tire specs and all that stuff, guys. But there should be more room to like fit a 285 tire in there without rubbing, right? Whereas on my car, I have Swift Springs, the RV's 265. Thank you. Sorry, 285. Yeah, somebody put a 275 3019. That's what it was. I appreciate that. Thank you for the info. So I'll do my best to remember that. So that right there, 265 3019, that's already something that would be a uber squeeze on a Type R, right? So my 275 4017s, which is the same thing as a 275 35 18, like height wise and width wise, they once in a while they scuff, they scrub, they rub, and that's a good offset because I think it's a 43, not like a 35, so it doesn't stick out way far, and it still occasionally rubs. And I'm only on Swift Springs. So I don't know the other thing with suspension. I should mention that too. That's going to be part of your 60 to 130. I don't know all of the parts that cross over that upgrade. I would probably have to go over it with Rich from RB6 to see what other parts cross over. Same math. Yes, they are. They are both frequent. They are frequency based, and but you don't need to use the math. Which I'm going to be honest with you guys, I've already done tons of testing in that scenario, and in the case of the Fk8 and the FL5, the ECU reacts so much faster, so much more consistent, and so much more level without the extra mass airflow sensor, because you just it's gonna reduce boost based off the actual IATs in the actual manifold rather than IATs on the outside. Because if you have a more efficient manifold, well, then you really should be just going off the manifold temp, right? So, so again, that's one of those things, the ignition coils and the ignition system. Now, this is something I have to fully verify, right? Because ignition system, I just want to kind of touch on this and then I'll move on, because this is really not part of the 60 to 130, but it definitely complicates the tuning. So you have your standard smart coils, but there's kind of two different ways that the coils kind of work. There's more of some sparks are kind of very slight longer duration, and some spark is just hotter and more like a punch in the face, so to speak, right? And those that are the hotter, quick, bam, right? Those cars like to run leaner. So just simply from changes in your ignition system, changing to maybe even a different brand coil, you may find that your air fuel ratios to make the car happy are different. So the other thing I need to kind of go over is the spark plugs, right? And the heat ranges and stuff like that. All that stuff can change too, right? From what's up, Sour Patch? What's up, Juan? All that stuff can change, right? And if you have a different coil, right, and you have a different type of spark through your plug's going to take a different amount of heat. So your different amount of heat requires different tuning, and that's going to affect how well the car may get a really good single pull. But then when you start loading that car up over time, like say fourth gear at your 60 to 130, that's going to play a role too. So those are a lot of the things that are going to play a role when it comes down to these cars and their differences. But as far as internally the engine, there's a coating on the ringland that's different, and that's it. And I believe the piston skirt, has, if I remember correctly, on the piston skirt, it has like little hollow spots on it, little dot hollow spots. I don't remember if that's this engine or not. I deal with a lot of different stuff, but the engines themselves are physically identical otherwise. There's zero difference. The injectors, anything. There is absolutely no difference between them. So, but what makes the horsepower difference between the Integra and the FL5? The exhaust. That's something I just want to touch on real quick. And Honda had tested this, and all they did was took a bone stock FL5, pulled off the front pipe, and it made 10 horsepower and 10 foot-pounds of torque across the board, which is not something we saw on the Fk8. So I really kind of think Honda neutered the exhaust a little bit on the FL5. I mean, it has a valve, but it just doesn't flow as good as the Fk8 exhaust did. All right, next topic. This is where we can really get into some of the other things that are going to play a role. All right. Now, I'm going to ask everybody in this group, and I'm going to give you three choices. Actually, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to give you four choices because they're all different. If you had, all right, and I'm just going to say this is not, if somebody doesn't have the perfect answer, don't look at it this way. I'm just asking this question because I want to know what people have been told, so that this way I can just get an idea where some of this information comes from. If you have let's choose this. Let's choose a Garrett G25 660, and we're going to choose the bigger exhaust housing, and we're going to have a ported head. Okay. All right. But we're not going to go nuts with it. What camshaft? What on this car currently? It's terrible at 60 to 130 because the spool is terrible and the PPG gears are terrible for 60 to 130. It's really awesome for 60 to 160, not 60 to 130. When it was on a G25 660, my 60 to 130 was mid sixes at like 27 pounds of boost. So ported head, G25 660, or better yet, just fine. Let's make it easier. RV6 R660, ported head. All right, you're gonna run stock cams, Kelford drop-in, TR2 or TR3. What camshaft do you think makes the most power? Okay, just a generalized question. What camshaft would you, as the people, pair with that? You know, what do you feel or think would be appropriate? You know, and because my Draggy does not like to go to the satellites. Okay. Now, Kelford drop-ins do fall in between stock and a TR2 and a stock and a stage 1. Okay. I'm getting most of the right answer. Fortunately, people have not tried to shove a TR3 cam in it, thankfully. So, yes, you can overcam. So, what happens when you overcam? The small side of the exhaust, that's actually a very valid camshaft, guys, too. I should mention this. Your power difference between a TR2 and a Kelford drop-in are gonna be within 10 horsepower on the same boost. The difference is the Kelford drop-ins are gonna offer you more drivability and mid-range. Not that there's really any drivability issues with TR2s. No, I'm not gonna waste my time with that. I'm not gonna waste my time for somebody who's. I'm not gonna get. Let's not bring this garbage up in here about that garbage, okay? It's just garbage. I'm not the one talking trash all the time. Let's leave that crap out of here, please. I don't want to deal with it. That's not what this is about. I'll waste my time going out there just to not get paid. So back to the topic. The Kelford drop-ins, the reason they're a good option, one, is they're going to keep you into an RPM band because I've done the testing on a 25 660 on a 92 housing on a ported head. And for reference, on a stock camshaft, 31.5 pounds made 614 uncorrected on a dyno jet. That's right, 614 uncorrected. So while the TR2 would still be a good cam, it's actually large in a ported head scenario, even for that turbo. Believe it or not, the TR2s and the Kelford Stage 1s go all the way up to a 66 millimeter turbo as an appropriate camshaft. And here we are, the 25 660 is a 52. It's a very small turbo. So, yeah, you know, Andy, you're right. They're not going to, the amount of money for the travel alone is just ridiculous. Like there's no point. It's just throwing money out there saying people, oh, race me for 5K. It's going to cost me $5,000 to go to Texas. So why race? Why? I'm not the one sitting there always trying to down the guys, man. They have always just got, but anyway, let's go on to the next slide. You know, I just don't want to get in the middle of that garbage anymore, man. I'm so over it. So that is a good one. So the TR3s, the actual smallest turbo you should really honestly be putting them on is what I have on my car, is a 35 1050. If you put them on an MHI, you will choke the crap out of the car. Oh, go away, man. Scared? I'm not running my mouth. Go away, man. Please just go away. Just go away. Go away. Let me teach you something, JT. All right. Since you don't know this, I tuned for them for years. Where do you think they got all their files from? But I guess you didn't know that. Right. Right. Guess you didn't know all that, right? Guess you didn't know that they took my files and slapped them on cars, got paid with my files. Guess you didn't know that. So whatever, dude. Go away. Remove. Go away. Remove. Get out of here, bro. Go away. Go away. Go away. Just go away. Oh my God, bro. Just go away. That's just stop. Man, it ain't about a victim's thing. That's legit, man. They legit stole from me, and that's just what it is. That's a fact. I have it in writing. You know, what else do you say? You know, whatever, man. So that's just trolling, somebody trying to troll, and that is what it is. Next slide. Back to reality, back to real tuning, real cars, and they that's what I mean. Angel makes a valid point. They stay coming into my chats, right? They stay trolling, they stay sticking things out there, and they stay starting garbage. They just keep doing it. So and they really do. So, and if I'm not scared, it's just a waste of money to go out there. If they want to run a race, they should just come here. So, all right, next slide. So there is something else that kind of comes into play, and this makes it a bit difficult in choice of camshaft. And this is not something we can do without testing. Try to look. I don't really care, man. Let's just move on. There's screenshots of their stuff too. I don't care, man. They just get into my business all the time, and I just hear it all the time, man. Can we just move on, man? Are we gonna do this all day? So you want to see screenshots? We can do it all day, man. So great. Go back to my Instagram and show where it shows that they literally did that to the customers, okay? Like, I don't know what to tell you, man. So, like, if you're going to be in there and you want to, I try to call them. Bro, that's called pocket dialing. I pocket dialed them. Why the fuck would I call them? Get out of here, bro. You never pocket dialed somebody before? Oh my God, bro. If you're going to keep it up, bro, you're going to get kicked out too. So just stop. So back to one of the things that you can't do when it comes down to the cam is you don't know the center line of the cam. And what do I mean by this? So the center line of the cam means where peak lift is in relevance to the OEM cam. So some of the cams like the TR3, the intake on the cam on the TR3 are offset. So you actually have to retard the TR3 cam more to get peak power out of it. So, and because there's a phase limiter pin, this can hurt spool. So for peak power on a TR3, normally in the camshaft, we get closer to the limit. Oh my God, that is such a lie. Can we stop? Go away. Remove. Bye. Goodbye. Goodbye. We're not doing this. Why was it? Stupid freaking thing. Goodbye. Bro, you never had a phone in your pocket? Bro, that's bullshit. That's just fucking lies. Remove. Remove. Goodbye. Go away, dude. Get out of here, man. Go away. Just find something better to do. Seriously, man, because now you're just trolling. Go away, dude. Anyways, yeah, I'm pretty sure my brand new Microsoft Surface is called my keys are stuck, fool. I'm friggin' whatever, dude. There. Bye. There we go. There you go. Bye. Childish shit. Okay, next slide. As I was saying, so no, I got. Oh, come on, man. All right, yeah. All right, yeah, he's hurt, man. I don't know, bro. I don't know. I'm pretty sure everybody's pocket dialed somebody at some point in their life. You know, they don't realize you're doing it. So, and that whole thing about dialing him 6 times, that's a farce. That's some BS. I don't even know what that's all about. All right. Now, the center line of the cam, back to the center line. So what happens is it makes it more difficult to get peak power. So if the center line's not where it needs to be, right? If the center line for some reason is off for, say, your setup, right? You're going to want less overlap in the case of like a smaller turbo. And because that if that center line is shifted, where you can only get so much reduction in overlap at the higher RPM to contend with the back pressure, the cam might not be appropriate for you. So Skunk 2s are, as far as the Skunk 2s being irrelevant to the Tier 2s and Tier 3s, they are literally the same thing as the as Tier 2s and Tier 3s. It's the same materials, just it's measured differently. It's measured in millimeters instead. So I knew as soon as I started this live, somebody would be in here trolling because they've just got nothing better to do than hate. Now, as far as back pressure, that's a big one, right? There's a couple ways that you can end up with back pressure, and you can do this from cam timing alone. And this is where a mistake that some tuners on, well, if no names mentioned, do this, and they really get themselves into trouble trying to make 10 more horsepower. So the problem is, it's kind of easier to draw this a little bit. And I've seen them, and I watched someone recently kill a head gasket on a new build in one day because both turbo selection and cam timing choice. Just because you have valve train and a built bottom end and studs doesn't mean that it's going to hold no matter what you throw at it, right? You can easily nuke a head gasket in a day, and I watched them do it in one day. I'm just going to say them, okay? And how did I know it was their fault? Because they literally blew an entire section off of the gasket, a section this large, all of the material was missing right off the top of the gasket. So a whole section right off the inside. This was not heat, right? Because heat will not blow in this fashion. It was literally blown the size of the end of this marker right there on the corner, one of the corners. And this is, when the way it was on the head, it was the back part of the block, which will be it becomes the lean area on a direct injection motor because of the low pressure zone, which means blowing a hole like that back in the corner is going to be 1,000% over aggressive as far as the tuning. And it does not matter if you have ethanol, okay? It doesn't matter. And if you take the cam timing, you do it wrong, you will create enough back pressure to where it will detonate after a couple runs. It'll just boom right out the back of the gasket, and it will kill it. It will kill it. You won't even see that much knock in the log. You will 1,000% kill it. And they literally killed the gasket. Like I said, I'm just going to say they. All right, no names. They killed it in 10 pulls is all it took. The car was fine for thousands of miles. So, and they tuned it in 10 pulls. So what was done was the exhaust cam timing, when you advance the cam timing on the exhaust comes out earlier. Okay. So basically, you are venting the pressure from the cylinder. Now, most of the time, then again, this depends on the camshaft center line. The close you'll get really close to a maximum cam advance, and it will end up helping you in the high RPM most of the time. But since in Honda, we stop at 7,000 RPMs to where our last adjustment is, okay? When you get towards 8,000 RPM, we can't continue to advance the cam for either increased burn speed and the increase in the RPM of the engine and the increased back pressure to try to vent it. So that is where you can get yourself in big trouble with an exhaust cam. And the other thing that it will do, okay, is break exhaust rockers. It will continue to break exhaust rockers when you have an excessive back pressure scenario. You will literally break the exhaust rockers. So there's no problem. And I'm going to tell you this 100 times over. I've done this unlimited times. I've never had any problems with valve trains or head gaskets on a 3770 ever revving at the 7800 on totally stock engine. Never. Not once did I ever have a problem with it. Ever. But I've seen it where they take away exhaust cam timing just to try to create more boost pressure. Now, what this does is it literally backs it up, right? You back it up in the engine. So as the boost is going in, right? If you open the exhaust valve later, it can't get out. It's a simple in and out. And if you open the exhaust valve later, it's going to make more boost pressure. So buddy, I don't exactly. Here's my point. Again, 2 years. We're talking 2 years. You know what's changed in the software in 2 years? Do you have any idea what's changed in the software in 2 years? Do you have any idea what's available in the software in 2 years? No, you don't. So this is what I'm saying. Like, here we go with the lack of understanding. You have no idea what's changed in the software in 2 years. Not a clue. 2 years ago, there were so many cars that were limited. Yeah, get out of here with that, man. If you want to be a JSR, man, go to JSR, man. What are you doing in my room? Seriously, what are you doing in my room? Again, you're just trolling. You guys can't help it, can you? So they moved a head gasket because they took a P700, revved it to $8,000. And the exhaust cam timing was retarded on top of it. And the P700 has a lot of back pressure because whenever you have a bigger compressor wheel, yes, it slows shaft speed down. It does. However, when the turbine wheel stays the same size, does not get any larger, that means there's less of a gap between the turbine and the compressor. Okay? With that less of that gap between there means less exhaust gas is getting out, which means more back pressure, more heat, more knock, and boom, blows the gasket out. So, and it's not as bad on the intake side, but more boost doesn't mean more cylinder fill either. So you can spool a car by not letting the exhaust gases out as much because you're creating the boost pressure, which creates the velocity, which creates the spool on the exhaust side. But it's also why the exhaust cam doesn't hold as much sway on peak power most of the time until you get into bigger cams. It has a bigger sway. Buddy, 2 years. You're talking 2 years of software changes. 2 years of software changes, dude. 2 years. So go be a JSR lover somewhere else, bro. Go 2 years of software changes. Here's the thing. Every time I hear some trash like that, and then they go actually drive the car out on the street, it's not the same thing. I'll get into average horsepower in a minute when it comes down to cam timing, because I'm going to get to that too. So, back to that exhaust cam timing, you are trapping more exhaust cylinder pressure. So yes, you will make a higher peak number, right, at lower RPM, which is what you'll see. You will see, more often than not, you'll see this, and it'll come up and then comes back down. Just like that. Swoop. This, yet I can take the same car, right? We have this and come back down, and I can take the same car and do this and do that with the same car. All right. Now I know it's hard to see on video, but there's a little gap here, and there's a lot more out here where it doesn't lose power. What do you think is going to be faster? Do you think 10 more here or 30 more at red line is going to be faster? And that can be part of exhaust cam timing, not just intake cam timing. Oh my God. Look. All right, dude. Why are you here? Are you here just to troll? Like, what are you doing here? What are you here for? These guys are just here to just come in here and just steal info like always. Buddy, go away. Just go away, man. Just go away. They're here to just steal info and just, oh God. They just don't stop. Talk about hate, hate, hate. Man. So, the hate just doesn't stop. Right. And here's the thing, guys. I'm the one harassing them. Right. So, back to the customer service, right? Right. You mean where I don't lie to my customers. So that can be a difference in exhaust cam timing and back pressure alone. And that back pressure, that 30 horsepower, that 10 horsepower here, and then make it roll over here. Yeah, you'll see more boost pressure. You will. But I'm going to tell you right now, in my testing on the RB6 anti-surge, it took 4 more pounds of boost. 4 more pounds of boost to make 10 more horsepower. So you tell me, as a customer, do you really think I should be putting 4 more pounds of boost into a car to make 10 horsepower? Does that really seem viable? Does that really seem like you're doing good to your customer and to your customer's car and to the longevity of the engine? You're not. So the intake cam timing. So this is where most of our power comes from. Okay. Yeah, exactly. That's my point. 10 horsepower. We're literally talking 10 horsepower. Yes. Right, Juan, you're correct. 44 pounds should be like 40 horsepower. Right. So is it really worth the struggle? Right. Do you really want to do that for what? A number? Really? And for something, I'm going to be honest with you, it does it great for one hit. And then the next hit, what do you think happens? And a hit after that, and a hit after that, and you increase the turbo RPM too. The turbo RPM goes up, the boost pressure goes up, the heat goes up, the efficiency goes down, the knock chances go up, the cylinder heat goes up, the EGTs. That actually doesn't really change too much. Your EGT doesn't change too much. But everything else that's bad that goes along with it goes with that. Intake cam timing. So intake cam timing is where most of your spool comes from. So if you've ever seen a car that, say, G30 770, and you'll see most stock motor cars will come up right about $5,000, and let's say right at, like, 6,500, they'll start to roll off, maybe seven-ish, right? And you'll see the horsepower curve. My brain is like backwards right now. Pretty close, right? On a stock motor, we'll say that's kind of like that. Maybe push it back a little further. But a lot of times I've seen it where you'll get a horsepower curve, and then the torque ends up like this underneath it after the crossover. Okay, this is usually, if you're dealing in a stock motor car and you have the good exhaust, this is usually an indication of cam timing that does not want to spool the turbo, because I'm going to tell you 1,000%, it does not. Every car that you change the turbo size on needs different cam timing in different areas. Although up here, it's less affected, but down here, where average horsepower matters, is a lot. That is where you're going to see a lot. Now, you can literally, from intake cam timing, what are you doing? What are you literally doing when you're actually changing your intake cam timing? Why is it such a big pull on it, right? So the intake cam timing has a lot of effect, because you're not only when the amount of cylinder fill you get, okay, it's also the actual boost pressure assisting to push down on the piston. So that is part of it. That is literally part of the issue when it comes down to the cam timing and the boost. Now, what you're literally intentionally doing in the lower RPM is actually creating some back pressure. And it sounds weird to do so, but you need it to, you need to actually increase the back pressure a little bit to get a little bit more boost down low, to increase the air velocity down in the low RPM, to get the air to get in the cylinder fast. And creating more overlap actually does drive a little bit of pressure into the turbine side too. That's the other thing that it does. You're driving pressure into the turbine side. So your overlap, by changing the intake cam timing where most of your spool comes from, that's got a lot to do with it. Also, by timing the intake timing, right, by changing it depending on the turbo, you can easily change 40, 50 foot-pounds of torque at the same, like say 5,000 RPM. You can change, without changing boost, 40, 50 foot-pounds of torque is a reasonable number to change on, say, a G3770. Like, you can really change the amount of power output that much just from intake cam timing. But you can also put yourself in the same scenario with the intake cam timing, trying to make a peak number up top. Well, how does that work? Well, because what happens then is, by not timing the intake cam timing properly and creating more back pressure, you create more drive pressure again, which is back pressure. Like, you're creating back pressure in the manifold. Like, you're literally intentionally in some of the areas creating back pressure where it would not normally have any back pressure at all. So it's kind of weird, because the cars want some back pressure to make horsepower, right? Like, zero back pressure on a turbo car actually is not a good thing. So that is part of the role when it comes down to the cam timing tuning on the car. So it looks like I kicked out quite a few. Was there that many of them in there trying to troll me that I had to kick like 7 of them out? What's going on here? Really? It's that bad? So as you're trying to fill the cylinder, and if you're creating too much back pressure up top, now it's gonna literally it should increase the turbine blade to the point where it spins so fast that you actually can't get the exhaust between the blades. So there is like a sweet spot, right? So there is a sweet spot where you have the good and the bad on that for the intake cam timing. So the last 2 things that you're going to run into with this, and this is where it gets really finicky, right? The finicky part is the direct injection, right? Fuel efficiency and fuel burn. So one of the things that you will see, and this can definitely be a bad thing, is when you start creating that back pressure on the exhaust, you can often see fuel consumption go down, but you made 10 more horsepower, right? So, but that fuel consumption going down, let's think about this. That means that there's less fuel in there cooling down the cylinder. So while you made 10 more horsepower at 7,400, but lost some up top, you've also reduced the cooling capacity of the engine, the cylinders. So I agree, Sour Patch. I should. I haven't, you know, the funny thing is I haven't even done a live in like God knows how long, and how many of them just ran up in here. Like, really, man? Are you guys got nothing better to do? It's a Tuesday night, man. Like, I understand why my guys come in here, but dang, man. And for the gentleman who had the DE5, man, I'm sorry, man. I think I shot past you. My apologies, man. I did. It's a DE5 me. Yeah. D3 full race size injector size you recommend. Injectors I want to recommend 100, 1500, or 2000s. So the one thing I'm going to be straightforward with you on the DE5 and the FL5 right now, this is the one thing that's a little bit weird is they do not have an idle fuel pressure table yet, keyword yet. So on 2000 cc injectors on 93 octane, it gets cranky at idle. Okay. Because the pressure is a little too high at idle. So for KT, but as far as total output, the XDI 2000s are going to definitely kind of future-proof your car. What cams did you run? Both of them were TR2 cams for the RB6 Prototype 7 Series and 6 Series. The difference was, one, weather conditions. It was literally 20 degrees hotter on the 7 Series, and it was much, much cooler. And I'm going to be honest with you, the uncorrected numbers were significantly higher on the 7 Series. 2000 cc injectors are not an issue on 93, provided you can lower the pressure on idle. That is the only concern. That is a non-issue. I'm going to tell you, I had 2500 cc injectors on Honda. All right, this is before the full race pump. So both were tier 2 cams, but I've got to say there's some severe efficiency differences, right? So yeah, they're two different dynos and two different cars completely in different days. So I'm going to tell you, as far as being in the car, which was faster, the Prototype 7 Series will spank a 6 Series all day. It will. Like I said, even the uncorrected numbers were better. Unfortunately, the 6 Series, the anti-surge one, had a 2.5-inch exhaust on it. So for those who don't know, a 2.5-inch exhaust is like way too small. When I say this is not a full 2.5, but it had a 2.5-inch connection to the front pipe. That is way too small. So just for reference, choke is right. So the Prototype 7 Series, you really want to think about this, 613 on 29 pounds. That's a lot, right? And I think it was only like 15 horsepower difference to the correction factor. I don't know why, but that dyno, I guess because also that day, so the dyno operator, when I go there, the one downside is he's got the door open and the temp sensor's right at the door with the fan blowing over it. The car's inside the shop away from the fresh air. So that's the downside of going there. So the 2000 cc injectors are on both cars. And the other difference was, it was not just more efficient because of setup in general, because you can get better efficiency on the same fuel system by not having back pressure. And that, again, can come down to cam timing. Again, there's a limit to that. You know, like Cheeto's car, like he's stock bottom end, but he said he wanted conservative. So I did. And yeah, 30 pounds, 605 or 607 is conservative timing, because on a ported head, the cams on what I did for the cylinder head, 17.5 degrees of timing is nothing. that was conservative to make a lot of power on a 3770. You don't be mistaken that an RV6 Prototype 7 Series can do what a G30 can do, but it can definitely do more than a RV6 R660. And the difference in spool, because here's the thing, while the RV6 definitely spools better, the 660 series, you can't really put any power into these engines till like $4,000 anyway, because the cam timing won't, the camshafts won't allow it, right? You're not really going, you're going to make all that boost down there. You're not into the compressor efficiency map no matter what, right? The only advantage a 660 would have is like, you know, very short races, right? Like short, like track races, you know, circuit courses, where the 7 Series, man, is just it's gonna be a 60 to 130 monster. And I've already I don't even know what it's making now, because like he just stopped turning the PID traction on because it overpowered it when the weather cooled down. For the 7 Series on a on a stock motor, yeah, we can do a lot for the 7 Series, but we're not going to rev it past like 74. The 2000cc injectors just have more headroom in RPM. Considered a safe horsepower or torque level for stock engine E50 to E60. It's really kind of dependent on, one, what's going to say where your dyno is, okay? Because when I'm turning around and it's 85 degrees out and 85% humidity over here, and you can't even breathe when you're standing here because of the humidity, if I were to come down like now, the humidity's come down this time of year, and come out there in the same 85 degrees, it makes, like, my car will make 30 or 40 more horsepower. So let's put it in terminology this way. In a cool part of the year in dry climate on 70-degree day, 430 torque to 430 torque, no lower than 4,500 RPM, up to 450 torque, but after 5,500 is safe. And as the RPM increases, anything you can make keeping under 450 torque, anything. So whatever horsepower you can make on a stock motor beyond that point. So that's the hard part, right? So the 2000s, look at it this way. The 2000cc injectors are really good for RPM. It's got a lot to do with RPM. Do they make as much power per pound of boost on the same amount of fuel as my injectors do? No. Their spray pattern's not as good. But you have more headroom in fuel. Echo 87. I'm the only one. I'm the whole business. It's just me, myself, and I. So G3900 compared to a 7 Series, it's not a, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, that's kind of not a fair comparison. I'll say this, on a bone stock motor, on a 60 to 130, the 7 Series will do, how do I put this? It's kind of hard comparison. I kind of want to look at the 7 Series as in between a G25 660 with a 92 housing and a G30 770 with an 83 housing. It's kind of somewhere in the middle, right? And that's a very hard comparison, because a G30 770 regular is a perfect stock motor, stock cam, all you can get out of it, turbo for that, right? But as soon as you change something like a cam, it's so different. Is there upgraded transmission set I can run on the DE5 while using HON data? And what power should I level look into upcoming on the transmission, upgrading a transmission? So it comes down to torque on the transmission. And yes, the graph gears fit in. The biggest problem with the Fk8, a lot of it was the, you're welcome, Austin. Thank you for being appreciative. I like that, you know. So the, my brain. Sorry guys, I'm just tired. Long day. Well, the trip was long. I had the craziest shit happened on the way out, man. I couldn't make up the shit that happened, man. It was crazy. 500 torque is just way too much. Yeah, he's saying 500 torque experience problems. So the input shaft flexes on the Fk8. I don't know how bad it is on the FL5 DE5. Again, the bearing in the case is different. It's just, and here's what the guys want to say, man. I bet you $1 million. I'll bet you $1 million when I said they. I bet you know who's going to assume I was talking about them. But whatever. Anyways, next slide. Oh man. So the FL5 transmission, we don't know really where the torque limits kind of lie. So one of the problems was the flex of the input shaft as you increased power, or wheel hopped it on the track and it came back down. The input shaft would kind of move, right? And then the gears would come apart and then and then they would just shear. And a lot of times, since fourth gear is your best traction gear, that's where it happened the most. So, and most of the guys on stock motor or in that somewhat power level would be in 1, 2, 3, and fourth gear on the tracks, not as often being in fifth gear. So most of the time they're going through the curbs, it's in third and fourth gear. And since third gear, you have better ratios to actually actual spin the tire instead of just dropping dry hooking that you would in the fourth gear. A lot of times that's where they broke. So theoretically, staying around 430 torque to 450 torque tops, I can tell you that I did make upper 400s torque to 500 torque on my trans for over a year. My car is anything but a dyno queen. It gets driven and beat on. The problem I have is, though, man, by the time I get traction now, it's like I might as well just be like, yes, officer, arrest me now. And it's no joke here, man. It's no joke here in South Carolina. If a South Carolina trooper nabs you, you're done. You're done. If they want to impound your car and you want to ever see it, you are done. You're done. You're done. 60 to 130 is so impractical, which is why I have that FL5 transmission. And I do plan, and this is just, going to see, possibly in the future, after I go and test this last thing, put the 6466 back on with a different wastegate and a different turbine housing, and then just keep that for street use and probably throw this in there. So, yeah. Okay. So yeah, SGPT, just GP type R knows what I'm talking about in South Carolina. They will nab you for 7 miles an hour over the limit just to nab you because they feel like they want to nab you. That is literally what they will do down here. So you don't see a lot of videos from me for a very good reason, because there's very few places to, one, safely not be a jackass and get somebody hurt. Two, the way my car is now, if I do full send even in fourth gear, it spins fourth gear, which is, I don't know if you guys ever done what it's like to doing 130 miles an hour and have your tires crack loose on the highway. It does not just spin tires and go straight. That shit is like terrifying. It's like it just all over the highway. Okay, it's no joke. So it is absolutely terrifying. So if anybody who really knows what that's like, it's not in a track condition. I don't have a helmet on. I don't have a roll cage in my car. And I think did like 100 miles an hour to 160. I forget, dude. It was only a few seconds. It was absolutely retarded. So, yeah. In Knightsville, yeah, Joseph, I would not be surprised if they do that with that when it comes down to pulling you over. And so another thing I want to say, listen, I'm not against draggy times, right, guys? I'm not, okay? But it's not the end-all be-all either. I really do kind of have one thing that I have a gripe with draggy times, and that is if you don't have a video of the car doing the draggy, how do we know it's your car? That's the one problem I have. It's not that I don't think draggy can be fairly accurate. There are times that there are glitches too. Okay. I am not against it. I think there are, both good and bad to it. But if you don't have an actual video of the car driving, how do we know it's even your car? Right? So again, this is why in my scenario, this is why I like to do just the general videos. And again, I can't really do them too much more. I only know one trooper out of God knows how many, and I don't know what kind of pull he has, and I don't know him like that around here. So, all right, guys, let me see. Did I miss anything? Fuel consumption, spool. EGT. Overlap does or can increase EGT. However, I should mention, whenever you're running methanol or ethanol, your EGT automatically comes down. But again, that's limited. So, yeah. So I get satellite, but you have to have 2 satellite connections. Not 1, but 2 at the same time for GPS to verify. Yes, the FL5 will fit, trans will fit an Fk8. However, your primary shaft speed will not read. You need to mess with the connector, and you have to rewire it because the sensors are different. You know what? I'll show you guys, because Spoon tried to do it. And I remember I had heard about it, and they had run into a problem. Where is Spoon ran into a problem. I don't know if they were at Thumbnail or where they were at. I just know that they ran into a problem, and the resistances are different too. It fits, right? Except for if we go by the base and the depth of the mounting depth, we can see here. We can clearly see the depth is different. So this is the FL5 one. Sorry, this is the FL5 one, and the pins are different. I have the schematic. Now, I'm going to tell you straightforward, I personally have not shoved in a car yet to see. I mean, I know a Motec, it'll just do it, right? But it's supposed to be just the same 5-volt setup, except for the ground is in the same spot, or it should be, I don't know if they consider it 0 volt or technical ground, because there's 5-volt 0 volt, and then there's 5-volt ground. They work a little different, those sensors. And look, guys, I don't know at all, but the 5-volt, the non-ground pin stays the same. Then the other 2 pins need to be swapped. So at the very worst, and it was one of the end pins. So I don't remember which of the pins need to swap in the connector. And the other thing is, I've already grinded off, but it was an edge on the sensor where the lip on the sensor, you can see that little ledge right here on the side, right? It's in a different spot on this one. It will plug. The last thing is, the one sensor faces this way and the other one faces straight out, which is no big deal. You just unclip it from the harness, plug it in. So supposedly, okay, and again, I don't have full verification of this. There was a guy who's in Arizona who has an FL5 transmission, and supposedly the rev match and everything still works. Now, he says the thing is that, again, this is second hand. This is not full first hand. This is not I talked to the guy. This is through a person that I know. I do trust his word. As far as the other guy, I don't know him. Says that he took it to a guy at a Honda dealer, a standard Honda guy, and he was even able to figure it out in 24 hours. Now, this is no offense to Honda techs, okay? Just don't take this the wrong way, but Honda techs are not high-performance technicians. So they're not. They don't, like, a Honda tech doesn't have a guy that's been doing nothing but Hondas his whole life and does nothing but stock Hondas his whole life and doesn't deal in high performance has no clue how a twin disc differs from a standard clutch. Right, but the thing is though, like there's ground 5 volt, and there's 5 volt 0 volt. So, and I don't mean as separate as like one can be a ground, legit ground ECU, straight ECU ground 5 volt, like the cam sensor has a legit ECU ground 5 volt, and then you have signal and then 5 volt, or it can be 5 volt 0 signal and 5 volt, which are technically different, which is freaking weird. But I forget the reason, but it's got to do with the type of sensor, where there's 2 different types of pickups in the sensor. It's out of touch with names, to be honest with you. I mean, but it's not really a big ordeal. Again, it's nothing too crazy, but the actual inside of the connector is the same. The pins are the same. All that stuff's the same. So I have yet to put in a car. The guy said the one thing was that his speedometer was off, which makes sense because the final drive is different. He said as speed increased, it was offset more, which is really simple solution, which means that it was literally percentage based incorrect. And as we know, if you ever spun the gears, the speedometer goes up when we spin because it's connected to not the front ABS sensors, but the actual transmission. I have the plug and play. I have the diagrams. That's not the issue. The issue is the resistances are different. So, which could very well mean that the guy is just talking out of his butt, because the resistive between the correct pins are totally different, right? The stock sensor will show resistance on, if you connect to these 3 pins, and I forget what order, but I think it's like first pin and last pin, first pin and middle pin will show resistance, whereas this sensor only shows resistance on 2 pins at all. And the other way is no matter what combination does not show a quote-unquote completed circuit, because you always have a circuit board inside of these, which could be done differently. So again, that's another factor. Just like with ignition coils, there's like dwell times and things like that. Each ignition coil, especially on our cars, has a little circuit board for a controller inside. It's not just a coil winding and 3 plugins. So that's where I don't know on that case, is that legitimate? Like, does he really have that? And unfortunately, I don't have a way to verify this. Like, I literally just have to go through the trouble, shove it in a car, and find out either it's going to work or it's not. And I thought about it, and I do want to do gears in that transmission, but yeah. It just right now, I just don't know if it would be worth it. So, would there be any downsides to running graph gears? Will rev match work correctly? So, I don't think they're off enough for rev match to change like that. It might not work as super smooth with graph gears. It really just depends kind of how far off the ratio is, and if, well, I don't know, because no, it might not work. It's because the tooth count. No, it won't. There's no tooth count. That's right. So how your rev match works is it's counting the teeth on the gears. So the only way to solve that, and that would mean that the 4th gear, because I'm pretty sure that's what this reads off of, is 4th gear, and this is your primary rev match for your input shaft speed. Your rev match functions off of shaft speed. So when you shift and you're putting that synchro in there before you let the clutch up, right? As you put it in, that changes the shaft speed of the transmission, and it sees that increase in shaft speed, and that's how your rev match reads. So that's the thing where you're going to run into that. So, and I don't know how the OEM ECU does it. I could just tell you with Motec, it is, you need the input gear tooth count to change. and then you need to change the ratios. And then after you change the input tooth count and ratios, then you actually have to manually set how much blip it has. So that's how we tune them in Motec. But as far as Honda, I don't believe any of that will work. So I believe you lose all that with graph gears. So it's all just manual blip at that point. So I do know that, but and I've thought about doing dog box in the FL5 trans, but man, that's just like, it just loses its drivability. But I talked to Graph and they're like, well, you revving too high for synchros. They're just going to get beat up. I'm like, well, yeah. That's another thing, guys. The higher you rev, yeah, well, you can only be so good of a driver with a dog box, you know? Like, you can only not beat up the dog so much, right? Like, that's not meant to just constantly be slapped, because the dogs are just like solid, like they're like plates, like wham. And even if you just let off the throttle, the dogs have play and they go bang, 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 bang. They're not like a synchronized transmission where it's a lot tighter, right? Dogs have big old notches and they just slam, you know, and there's gaps in the dogs and they go bang, 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 you know. So that's the downside to a dog box, man. You really gotta like uber baby it, get the rev match just right. So you meant about rev match with graph. Oh yeah. Well, yeah, you could do that too, you know, just get the lift on the throttle, you know. So I'm not the lift on the throttle, you know what I mean? The pedal raiser, you know. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a fun live. I really appreciate everybody coming out there, man. Opinions are in I search for pump gas versus MHI stage 2. Then any turbo like the RV6 is going to do better in a pump gas scenario because there's less back pressure because of the bigger exhaust housing. So in a pump gas scenario, it will do better. They do, and this is another thing I should say, the less back pressure, as I said, in cam timing, changing the cam timing can create more fuel consumption. It can. Why? Because with less back pressure, it means more fresh air in. Now, what I meant by earlier, some back pressure, well, too much fresh air in and too much ethanol can actually hypercool and make less power. So that can happen too. So some back pressure can be good. Depends on the scenario. Yeah. Yeah. Well, but you know, guys, you can always restart the video, you know, and hopefully the next live, I just don't come in and keep trolling, and let's just keep it on topic, you know, and just keep going. Next slide, man, you know. So yeah. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. It's been a really cool topic. You know, and again, I appreciate everybody that comes out every time. And I do apologize for not being here on Thursdays like I've been previously. I'd like to do it more often. This is what I enjoy. I enjoy when we, you know, have these conversations and I get to share the info, you know, and it just with no like biasness or craziness, you know. I'm grateful for those days, man, because that's what more community stuff should really be about, man. You know, and do me a favor, guys. It's like if you guys happen to be in their rooms and they say something, do me a favor, just leave it alone. You know, just leave it alone, man. Like I'm getting too old for this, man. I really am getting too old for that stuff anymore. It's really just too much to keep hearing it, you know. It's just I got so much that I just want to move forward with, and I just want to focus on the business, man, and the happy people in the community, and like let's just make it better, you know. Yeah, man. I'm trying not to, man. I'm trying not to. I'm trying not to let them get to me, man. They're always poking and always all up in my stuff and just doing crazy stuff, man. And here's the funny thing. I just want to say this, okay? That comment is either a complete lie about me calling him 6 times in a row, or which anyone can do, is I can put anybody's name on anything and say, oh, so and so called me a dozen times. So I don't know why that guy even said that. I don't know what that's all about, but this photos or whatever. Again, just stuff like that. I don't go why to go to those lengths. I don't get it, man. I just don't understand. It's not my nature, man. I'm the kind of guy you do poke at me enough. I kind of like, but I'm trying not to be that way anymore. I just don't want to be in the middle of the drama no more. So thank you guys for being supportive. And I'll see you next time. I'm going to try to do next time also, try to give you guys, like I did today, more advanced notice, you know. So, all right, brother, man, Brandon, thank you, man. Appreciate it. And I'll see y'all later, man. Take it easy, guys.